We really focused on vegetation a lot this year in our travels, whether it be for crappies, for pike, for bass, or for walleyes. It all came down to what type of vegetation we were dealing with in all instances. So we went to Kansas, and in Kansas we're doing traditional bass fishing there. Well, there it was all about, are they on the standing pole timber, in other words the standing trees that are dead, or are they on the lay down trees that have fallen and are horizontal in the water, or are they on the bushes themselves, or are they on the grass, the green grass? And when we were there in the spring, it was all about the hardwood bushes with the lay downs in them.
Fish, you got him. There we go. Come out of there. That's why you do that, guys. That's exactly why you make that pitch into there, because there's a whole mix of cover. And I don't know if Tim was looking over there or what, but that's another nice one. And when we get them coming this way, we'll swing them in the boat all in one shot. All right. There we go, guys. That's how you do it. So perfect tournament keeper size fish for this lake. You should be able to catch tons of those. And they are fired up. But if you look, we're drifting in now. There's stump and everything in there. Big laydown going this way, a bunch of broken stuff every which way. You know you're gonna get bit in there if you've done this game very much.
But when we were there in the fall, it was all about this nice lush green grass that was growing on the bank. But either way, pinning down the vegetation to the one that was the most let's say popular with the fish allowed me to not have to fish all of it and just focus on the critical parts.
Got him. Come out of there. Come out of there. Got him. All right. Point blank range, people. Point blank range. Okay, let me go on down here. Put those down real quick. All right, come on up in here, buddy. Whee! If camera looks down, it was in the back of that cane grass right there. There's several different stick-ups in there. And he was all the way back in there, and between the wind blowing in there and all those stick-ups, it's hard to feel. So it took me a second to feel him, but it's a good quality fish. I like that. For this pond, that's exactly what you're fishing for.
In Minnesota, we did a lot of fishing around vegetation, almost all of it there. And one of the days we were focused on lily pads. Well, lily pads, there's big giant fields of lily pads, and then you have to figure out, are they on the shallow edge of those lily pads, or the deep edge of the lily pads? Are they in the holes in between the lily pads? Or maybe, as we found out was the case, there's some other grass growing under the lily pads, and where those two come together is where you're gonna find a lot of fish. But there again, it was all about using your eyes, not your depth finder, to focus on the vegetation, figure out where I needed to put my cast within there, and then we could catch fish at will.
That's a big one right here, guys. For this lake, or for what we've seen here, this is a big one. Look at that.
Very nice.
All right, we gotta be careful with him. He's buried good. That's a nice one. Oh, buddy, don't do that. Come here. Where is he? Come here. Come out from under there. Got you, sucker. That's a toad. That is a toad. For a northern strain largemouth, boys, we will take that one all day long. And we're gonna have to take a quick moment with this fish so that we can get a cell phone photograph.
When it came to the walleyes, a whole nother story in the vegetation, because there it wasn't so much that they were in it as they were on the edges of it. So there it was all about using the Lowrance system to find the edges of the grass. You'll see in a lot of the footage the boat looks like it's not moving. It's because it's not. We're sitting right on the edge of the weed line. So you can throw either up above it on top, or you can throw out into deep water, or you can throw parallel down it. And what we found in almost all cases in Minnesota, which has been several trips now, this has all been the case, throwing parallel slightly out from the weed edge is the most consistent, at least with the reaction bites that we were throwing, or reaction baits that we're throwing. Running a jerk bait or a crank bait or a small swim bait down the edge of that vegetation was the best way to get walleyes to bite in all of our travels this year.
All right, guys, if you look at that graph, you can see that we're throwing over the tip of a long tapering point, and there's weeds up on top of it. You can see the boats out on the edge of it, and we're working on that tip. That transitions away from the weeds, and that's what I'm trying to throw this stunted jerkbait around, to get these walleyes to bite it. So got him like that. Oh, that one pulled off, golly. And there's a pile of them right there. From what I can tell, we have not graphed it. We did not get up on top of it. The whole point is to let the fish do it, and that one fouled my bait. But the couple key rigging things with this too, those weeds are very shallow and this jerkbait will run relatively deep. So I've got it on a fluorocarbon, or excuse me, a nylon monofilament leader rather than a fluoro leader like I normally do. And that'll keep the bait higher in the water column and make it a little bit more friendly to fish around the weeds. Otherwise, it's my standard jerkbait deal with the 15-pound X9 braid and the fast rod, and I've got it on the rocket so I can recover line quickly with it, and just getting after them. Literally the first spot we stopped, so it's map reading 101. Big giant point out in the middle of the lake with a weed edge on it. That's really all you really need out of life in a lot of scenarios. And Dano's hooked up right now. I think we got us a pretty good spot to fish. Can I get the net, Dano? What'd you get? Wow. And Dano's throwing a stun of 2. And that looks like Walter. That's a nice one. And hold the line real tight so he doesn't tangle in the net. And there you have it, guys.
Conversely, when we were targeting bass around the same lakes even where those walleyes were, they were in and above the vegetation. So in that case, instead of throwing the suspending jerkbait in some of the cases, we threw the floater, the hit stick, above the grass and work the jerkbait above the top of the grass and draw the fish out. When we get up too shallow, we started running into pike. But there again, when I can see the grass visually with my eyes, I know I'm getting shallow enough to run into pike. As soon as that vegetation disappears with my eyes, then I know I'm getting into a reasonable depth range that I can probably target my large and smallmouth there. And then once we get out from there to the weed line, now I'm looking at either smallmouth or walleyes. But the relation to that vegetation was the critical thing.
Okay, as soon as I got back on the right contour, hope it's not a pike. It is a pike. So there's a fine line, guys, in this situation that we're dealing with right now from the viewer's standpoint. And the fine line is if we get shallow, we catch a few more largemouth, but a lot more of these guys. And I don't like these guys. If they were bigger, it'd be one thing, but these guys are all the same size.
The big takeaway from vegetation is this: you have to be very observant. Typically, where there's any vegetation, there's a lot of it, and very rarely, I grew up in South Florida, a lot of vegetation, very rarely does all of it hold fish equally. You have to figure out which type they're on, which depth range they're in, and where in their relation to those weeds is really, really critical.